So here we have the patent for rational inquiry, which was written by cult leader Keith Raniere. Did the cult members read this patent? Probably not. But the government took away all the other resources from NXIVM. So this is all really we have to work with. But this will outline the method for rational inquiry. And rational inquiry was Keith Raniere's scientific way to make you the best person you could possibly be. And then NXIVM will be this little civilization that the rest of the world will copy, and then we'll have utopia. So that's what this is. This is the roadmap to utopia. Okay, so we already briefly looked at this beautiful diagram, and now we're going to get into the meat of it. So the field of the invention. The present invention relates generally to educational methods for personal improvement. In particular, the present invention relates to a method for detecting and removing disintegrations. So if you notice here, it says the words personal improvement, and nowhere in any of this is sexuality mentioned. There's no sex magic, there's no sex gods, there's nothing like that. So people joining NXIVM were joining a self-help cult. People like to call NXIVM a sex cult, but as you can see here, no mention of it. And it's not going to be mentioned because that's not what kind of cult it is. That was Keith Raniere's ulterior motive. So there was a sliver of like people who slept with him, and but if we judge cults by their ulterior motives, then like 99% of cults are going to be sex cults. People did not join this cult for this reason. They joined this cult for self-help. It is a self-help cult. So background of the invention. Educational methods for personal improvement are known in the art. For example, one educational method for personal improvement includes modifying the emotional response of a student to an upsetting stimulus. In other personal improvement methods, principles and habits of successful people are studied and revealed so that the student may try to copy or emulate these habits. Attitudes and traits of great leaders may be shown so that a student may try to emulate these characteristics. So why are you doing NXIVM? Why this self-help cult instead of all the other self-help cults? Because they do things wrong. They do things different. So they're trying to modify your emotional response, or they're just trying to get you to copy other people. Right? NXIVM is different. So to overcome these deficiencies, NXIVM is going to give you rational inquiry. Rational inquiry includes a plurality of questions and observations leading to answers and a greater awareness. So this has never been done. No one's ever thought to do these things and reach this greater awareness. So as you can tell right away, that this writing is not very good. And it's very clear that Keith Raniere did not write this. So what likely happened, what I think happened, was that Keith Raniere was laid down on the couch. He had his head in one lady's lap and his feet in another lady's lap. And there was another lady nearby on a chair with a laptop, typing things down as he was talking. And there are formatting errors or typos, but in fairness to the lady who was typing, she's probably like 15 years old. So we're going to cut her some slack. I took the liberty of going through just so we can skip all this. It's just not important. So rational inquiry changes the way individuals experience the world. When integration occurs, a piece of information falls into place and the meaning of the stimulus changes. Rational inquiry creates integrations so people become more consistent in their beliefs and behavior. Integration provides a profound shift in how people do things. Whatever made things seem difficult or impossible for them in the past, or made them ineffective or unmotivated, literally just falls away and disappears. So what is the promise of NXIVM? Well, if you are sitting in these modules or seminars or whatever they're called, you are thinking to yourself, oh my God, I am dangerously close to average and I'm going to puke. I can't be like a normal person. I have to be super great. So they're telling you right here, listen, if you ever have failed, that's fixable. And we have this method that's scientific. So it's true and it's going to work because it's scientific. It's going to change the way you do everything. And it's just inside your head. If we just tweak these things inside your head, nothing can get in your way. You'll succeed in everything that you do. Yeah, so integrations, so disintegrations are also called limiting beliefs. So yeah, so if you get rid of all your limiting beliefs, it's your beliefs that are keeping you down. Just change your mind, and then just change the way you see things, and then you'll have no problems ever. A disintegration may be manifest in a bodily function response, an emotional function response, and or an intellectual function response. Sometimes these responses are suboptimal. For example, if an individual has a consistent suboptimal emotional response to a stimulus, it is often a result of the meaning of the student applies to the stimulus. So this, a lot of this is saying a whole lot of nothing. Can we define suboptimal? What does that mean? Does that mean you're not happy all of the time? We don't know. It doesn't tell us. I guess it's not important. Traditional therapy modifies and changes the emotional response so the student has to the stimulus. The rational inquiry method modifies the meaning of the stimulus itself to the student before an emotional response occurs. That's never been done before. No one's ever tried to change the meaning of things for people, so it's different. Okay, so if you're Keith and Nancy, right? You know this is a cult, you know it's bullshit, and you don't want people going to other cults. So that's why this section right here sets that up. It primes you. It says not only are we great, but everyone else does things wrong. You'll never find anyone else doing what we're doing. So we're the only ones you can go to. So and if you're a member of NXIVM, or you're just attending these seminars, odds are pretty good that you've attended quite a few self-help seminars, and wouldn't you know it, you're still dangerously close to average. So it must be that they're wrong, right? There must the answer is somewhere, and it's not there. So you know what? Don't listen to any other self-help things. You don't need it, and don't listen to therapy. If you're Keith and Nancy, right? You don't want your people going to therapy because you're doing quite a lot of work to disable their judgment, and a therapist is probably going to be like, try to undo that for you. So you don't want that to happen. Therapy is only going to get in your way. They're going to stop forking over money and attending your modules if a therapist says, hey, I don't think that makes a whole lot of sense. So you can't have that. You can't. Therapy is bad. They just do it wrong too. So all these other people, they got it wrong. We got it right. Don't listen to them. They'll only hold you back. The present invention includes a matrix or plurality of modules, including practices and inquiries that change an individual's recognition and beliefs through rational inquiry. The plurality of modules, I guess because there's a lot of them, that's very impressive, including practices and inquiries, are the matrix used to arrive at a minimal basis. The modules, including practices and inquiries, create a consistent personal definitional basis for practical philosophical concepts and words, and also provides distinctions. Thus, through the modules, including practices and inquiries, an individual may determine a minimally assumptive matrix of consistent internal existence and determine a minimally assumptive matrix of consistent reality. So this is not really saying a whole bunch. I don't know why I left this in here. But if this is saying nothing, then this is saying a whole lot of nothing. So we're just going to go ahead and we're just skip all of this. Okay. So we got a lot of the priming done. So the priming is like, why us? Why this cult? So we set it up already. So now we need, as Keith and Nancy, we need to start, once we got people sold, we got to break down their judgment so they don't go, hey, wait a second. This still makes sense. So here we have our first little maneuver here. With respect to philosophy, all of a point set topology definitions can be rebuilt, compactness, connectedness, etc., relating to philosophical concepts. Those definitions, and actually the whole technology of point set topology and set theory, can be translated over to philosophy. Different philosophies are connected and or convex, and things along those lines. The philosophy includes Boolean logic philosophic operators. The Boolean logic philosophic operators use principles of set theory, mathematics, and topology to analyze logical philosophical arguments and actually the creation of a philosophical form of questioning. This falls under philosophy and allows a person to take a philosophy and, by using point set mathematics literally, judge if the philosophy forms a consistent matrix, is consistent, and all of the point set topological properties exist. In particular, Boolean logic is used to show that two philosophic concepts are either equivalent or subsets of each other. So I call this little maneuver highbrow beating. And it's actually a good move to put this right in the front. So if you're going to a module or a seminar or whatever it is they did, you are sold immediately that Keith Raniere came up with this and that he has an IQ of 200 or more, or I forget. He's very, very super smart, and that's why this is so important, because only someone that smart could figure out how to bring about utopia. And no one's ever been as smart as him. And this proves it. So this is highbrow beating. What is this saying? Nothing. Philosophy is kind of like math. If you like change the terms, Boolean logic can show concepts are equivalent. No, it can't. But that doesn't make sense. But it sounds, wow. What is he saying? I don't know, because it's so smart. It's not like this is nonsense. It's because it's so smart. Of course it's going to be over my head. Of course I'm not going to understand this. I don't have an IQ of 230 or 37, or was that his IQ, or was that his years in prison? I forget. But this tells you right away, I need to submit to this person because they're so much smarter than me. Of course their judgment's going to be better than mine. I would look like a fool if I tried to argue with this, or even attempt to really understand it. I know my place, and my place is below Keith Raniere. I am entrusting myself to his clearly high intelligence. Okay, so communication includes technology interfaces and perspective therapy. The technology interfaces includes voice and visual. The technology okay, so when they say technology, they don't mean like, sometimes they do. Sometimes they actually mean technology, and other times they mean techniques. I don't know what they mean. So what are they saying right now? You learn things through sound and vision from people telling you things, and then you seeing things. So technology interfaces deal very specifically with the nature of human communication through reflexes and different voice stressors and patterns. A reflex is a response to a stimulus that is based on meaning. Now, I highlighted this beautiful little sentence here because this is actually the opposite of what a reflex actually is. But this is what cults do too. Well, anyone who really wants to manipulate people, changing around language is a very helpful thing to do. Why? Because if I say something as Keith and Nancy, and you get like this feeling like it's wrong or it pisses you off or something, and you come at me and you're like, I'm having a reaction to this. I don't, like, this doesn't make sense to me. Well, as Keith and Nancy, I can say, you're having a reflex. Right? And you're not going to remember that I changed the meaning of the word reflex to mean something completely different. You're going to go, well, am I having like this knee-jerk, mindless reaction? Am I acting like an idiot? Am I just getting emotional? That's a good way to get you to doubt yourself. And if you're like, no, I'm not having a reflex, I'm having a response that is based on meaning, you go, well, that's what I meant by reflex. See, you don't even know what you're talking about. You go, oh, am I a dummy? Like, what? And then you just get bamboozled, and then you just get frustrated, and then you give up. So switching around language so people can't actually communicate the properties of reality. And if you can't communicate the properties of reality, you'll have no idea what's going on, so you can't really disagree with anything. An individual can better create human and technology interfaces using these elements. With the use of reflexes and phonemic representation of voice through expression, one can make technologic interfaces that can, in fact, sense human emotions and other different things in humans. So before we talked about why did they say this was patented under AI, I guess he's kind of describing something that could be AI. If they mean technology, I just don't know what they mean at any given moment. And that's what manipulating language does. I have no fucking clue what you're talking about because you switched the meaning of words. You just scrambled them all about. Now I'm lost. So having a phonemic software package allows one to send email or other correspondence that can be read in any given person's voice. Now, I think this was made in like 2000s. So did they already have technology like that? When was it? September 1st, 2000. No? September 5th is when it was filed. I don't know. So the perspective therapy includes preemptive techniques, essence intent, deprogramming strategies, loading, parts balance, these numbers mean nothing by the way, non-integration, and therapy by number, exploration of meaning. The preemptive techniques include techniques used metaphorically to close the front door before the horse gets out. They are a way to create double binds with a major force and minor force, which also ties into the essence intent and the use of remote setups. Do they go on to explain what any of this means? No. But I can explain very vaguely what a perspective therapy is. So, you know in the beginning of this, where they like primed people to say like why they're so great and why you should listen to them? Well, this cult is basically like an MLM. So it's like a pyramid scheme. So you're not going to go out there and convince everyone to join this cult. You're going to teach other people to sell people or teach them how to sell to people to join the cult. So that's what preemptive techniques are, or perspective therapy, or whatever it is called. This is the method to basically, like, they're teaching people how to be salesmen for the cult, to sell the module package. Create a double bind double binds with the major, I don't know what that means, major force and minor force. Where are these forces? Don't know. What is a remote setup? Not a clue. You want to close the front door before the horse gets out. That's obvious. But the rest of this, I have no fucking clue. It just sounds not smart. It sounds complicated, right? It sounds, you're double binding things, and there are remote setups. It sounds very secretive and sounds very only like really skilled people would know how to. Sounds like socially sophisticated. Yeah, sounds socially sophisticated. A preemptive technique is a way of discussing something and building a logical foundation so that it can be used in the future. Sort of like a lemma. Yeah, that's how you pronounce it. In mathematical proofs. Recapitulation is defined as when a communication is done so that the punchline is not given until the very end, unlike other punchlines, so that when the index, i.e. the punchline, is given, everything that came before it must be replayed and reevaluated in the mind in light of the new information. This allows for greater learning, I guess. It also allows for an aha experience, the hallmark of learning, I guess. Preemptive techniques allow a person to set up a story so that it has a more profound punchline. So an example of this you saw in the vow. So they have like a whiteboard and they write I and X, which are the Roman numerals for the number 9. And then they ask the group of people, how do you turn this into a 6 using one line? And because it's all straight lines, it looks like Roman numerals, everyone goes like, they're thinking, how do I get it to be a V and an I, which are the Roman numerals for the number 6? How can you do that with one line? Well, you would have to move this around, and then like you would have to move it. I don't know how you would do that. And then the presenter draws a squiggly line that is an S in front of the IX. It goes, now it's the number 6. Everyone goes, wow, I didn't think of that, right? Because they were primed to think in Roman numerals, which are all straight lines. I didn't think of a squiggly line that could be S. So because you had that moment, like, oh my God, I did not think of that. Wow, these people must really know what they're talking about. So it's not logical, right? That does not prove that they know what they're talking about, but it tickled your mind. And it got you more oh, wow, they think differently than me. Maybe because they think differently, they'll have new ways of thinking that will help me. So the essence intent includes being intent. In therapy, an identification of essence intent keeps a therapist from getting caught up in content or process. Rather, it allows therapists to understand the intent of an individual in a given interaction. So what's very confusing about this is, remember before when they said traditional therapy and they said how it was bad? I keep going back and forth as to, are they talking about their therapy or like other therapy? So it keeps, so this sounds bad, right? It keeps the therapist from getting caught up in content in our process. Rather, I think it's just because the paragraph doesn't make sense. Rather, it allows therapists to understand the intent of an individual in a given interaction. Yeah, I think the paragraph just isn't written well. Okay, so essence intent is the intent of a person for saying or doing something. When someone identifies enough essence intent, they eventually come down to being intent. Being intent answers the question of, what is this person trying to do in the world? And how is it manifest in everything they do? So I guess essence intent is just kind of like the superficial reason, and then being intent is kind of like your worldview. I guess at some point very early in life, there was some incident of non-satiation which the individual became fixated upon. That fixation translated itself into everything else that they do. Once the therapist finds the person's being intent, the therapist can work from an integration standpoint to integrate it, and thereby all the disintegrations that followed after it will rapidly fall into place. Sometimes it is necessary to get through some of the other more superficial disintegrations to get down to a more primary disintegration. So I guess, yeah, you could have a superficial reason for doing something, and then there's maybe like a reason behind it that even you're not aware of. So this sounds a lot like psychoanalysis. Psychoanalysis, especially like this early childhood part, so you form the worldview before like you really understand anything, and so some of your beliefs are going to be mistaken. So what psychoanalysts do is they bring these thoughts to the surface, so you become aware of them. And once you're aware of them, you can tweak them, and then that will change the problem behaviors or symptoms you're experiencing. But the difference between that and this is that psychoanalysis is kind of like you focus on specific symptoms or behaviors that are getting in your way. You target those, and then you can become more mentally healthy. But this is extending into everything that you do. So this is not just problem areas, this is everything. So you will be completely different. But this also makes the same mistake as psychoanalysis, that just because you understand why something is the way it is, doesn't mean that you will know how to fix it. And even if you understand a problem, doesn't mean the problem is solvable. But they're saying, hey, once you dig in deep and find the roots to everything you do, and you just fix that, then everything you do will just be better, and you'll have no problems. So all your problems are because of this non-satiation that happened to you as a child. Which is just not how anything works. But it sounds like, oh my god, that if I could just do that, and then everything's great. Sold. Help me. Yes, do this. If you understand how to do this, then just do this for me, so my life will be perfect. Deprogramming strategies are strategies that utilize a lot of the technology to thwart a person's potential attempt to protect their faults or their fears, e.g. phobias. So these doubts that you have, that rational inquiry, about Nancy, about Keith, well, this is just your fear and your faults protecting themselves. This is what makes you dangerously close to average, is that you are not ready for greatness. So we have this technology that will keep you from getting in your own way. So you can't trust yourself. You trust us. We need to deprogram you from your inferior beliefs, your limiting beliefs. And you're going to fight us. And that's just proof. That's just more proof that you actually are inferior. This is why you're kind of a loser. It's because you don't want to listen to us because you just can't you're maybe a coward. But don't worry, we will help you. Essentially, instead of attacking a structure that is based on a fear, the practitioner builds another structure that is strong and supported by consistent information. Once the stronger structure is in place, the practitioner transitions the person to that structure, and the fear structure collapses. To do this, the practitioner talks around a non-integrated issue, constructing concepts around the issue in such a way that it is not the only thing that is supporting their belief system. So you are irrational and you cannot trust your beliefs, your worldview, but I got a better structure for you, and you're going to latch on to my structure. I'm going to tell you how things really are. Don't be scared. When the disintegration is uncovered, they literally have a strong place to go to, as opposed to trying to desperately to fight for the only thing that they believe in. So these doubts, you might think like you're having rational thoughts by doubting what we're telling you, but really, you're just desperately fighting for the only thing that you believe in. So it's not reason, it's fear. Everything that can go against me as Keith or Nancy is really you being afraid. They have another belief to rely on that is more consistent and integrated. We figured it out, you haven't. Just listen to us. Loading includes a subset called reflexes. If the practitioner looks at an individual while they are communicating, it is almost like there is a pulse or strobe-like effect. Okay, they go from expression to expression to expression. Yes, that's true. People do that. This pattern corresponds with the idea associations as the person thinks. For example, the person may see an ad on TV about Christmas, and the person may think of a past Christmas of theirs, which leads the person to remember a red dress that their mother wore, and that red dress gives the person a feeling of comfort. That feeling of comfort reminds the person of a time when they were a baby, being held by their father who had hairy arms, and the hair on his arms might remind them of the hair that the person has on their arms right now. Human thought patterns go from intellectual associations through emotional associations. There is a whole series of thinking, feeling, and sense memory associations. That's so true! With each one of these transitions, the physical body takes on a certain aspect of that physical transition, depending on the emotion that is triggered and the amount of data that comes from that transition, or the amount of emotional charge. By watching a person's reflexes, or by listening to the stressors in the person's voice, reflexes can be heard in the voice as well as seen, one can ascertain a tremendous amount of information about the person without the person consciously transmitting it. In fact, the person does not even have to be speaking if the practitioner is sensitive enough. For example, while talking to a person, the practitioner may mention the concepts of my father and my mother. For the listener to understand father and mother, they must load in a concept of father and a concept of mother. This gets to loading. If the concept of, this is just breaking stuff, wow. If the concept of mother has a lot of emotion to it, then when the individual loads in mother, there will be a more profound shift in their physiology when mother is mentioned. This demonstrates to the practitioner that there is more emotional charge and emotionality behind mother than behind father. Learning to see these pulses gives the practitioner this type of information. These pulses can also be seen on a video and or heard on audio. Did you know that when people say things and they show emotions, that gives you information about what they're thinking and what they feel? Like, this is the longest explanation of read people's body language. Did you know that you could read people's body language and that words mean things to them? Now you do. So parts balance refers to the different parts or aspects of a person's personality. Oh my god, they're so smart. Okay. The practitioner recognizes that that different parts may be at different stages of development, and in a sense, a whole different experience set. What the practitioner seeks to do, instead of trying to integrate the parts together, is to develop the parts so that they can grow and grow together to be on equal footing and force. For example, suppose a person has developed two parts, a more developed mature part and a less developed childlike innocent part. If the mature part has developed into the extreme and angry a mean part, and the practitioner tries to integrate it with the innocent part, the less developed part with the mature, stronger part, it may, in effect, be unbalanced. The less developed part could be crushed. It could therefore, in effect, cripple the person's ultimate potential. What this is saying, I mean, there's parts work, which is the idea that, like, sometimes people split their personalities off into different parts, and so you just, like, play around with that idea, but this is not. So this is like, okay, it's not important. This is not important. What's important is this last part, which is if you do this wrong, whatever they're talking about here, if you do that wrong, you could be crushed, and you could cripple your potential. You could cripple your potential forever, your ultimate potential forever. So I guess it's not important that you know what this means. What's important is that you do exactly what they say. Otherwise, you are boned. If you one wrong move and you're done for. Just trust that this makes sense. Obviously, they're so super smart. So the non-integration or disintegration includes ineffective or non-transcendent emotions. Non-integration or disintegration can be illustrated by analogy. A person has goals, objectives, and things they want to achieve. This can be viewed like a sled with a bunch of sled dogs out in front. Let's say there are 10 sled dogs pulling the sled towards a goal, and the person is the sled. A disintegration is a sled dog that is going in a different direction. Most people strive for certain goals, but for most of them, goals are only wishes. A person moves towards the goals, but then something seems to stop them, so that the person never seems to have an absolute directed progression towards them. This is because being disintegrated is like having the sled dogs all going in different directions. So the sled never really moves forward very far. So if you're having problems, it's because of you. Problems exist because you are failing to do something. It's not that some problems are unsolvable or... So what this does, if I'm Keith and Nancy, this helps me because obviously you're always going to have problems. Everyone always has problems. It's just the way it is. But if I can get you to believe that you could have no problems, then you having problems must mean that you are doing something wrong. And as Keith and Nancy, I don't want you to ever feel like you've done it, you've succeeded. I am fully integrated, right? Because then you're done with us and then you stop giving us money. We don't want that. We want you to always feel like you could do more. And we can do that. If we can convince you that you can live a problem-free life, then yeah, then there's always work you could be doing. So you will always need us. If you have problems, then you are failing. Okay, so adults have disintegrations. This is because when a person is a child learning to be an adult and learning about the world, the person can only learn things from a child's perspective. That perspective is based on a child's understanding of the world, a child's intellect, and a child's wisdom. But these teachings become the cornerstones of the whole adult reality. Most of the strategies used by an adult on a day-to-day basis were developed based on a child's logic and intellect. Bodily function, intelligence, and emotions are a subset of non-integration or disintegration and include define, cause, or remove. So you can't trust your worldview. You have a child's brain, child's beliefs. We see clearly. We're going to help you. And I guess you're not insulted by this if you're a member because, I don't know. I don't know why you're not insulted by this. They're saying you think like a child. I guess because it lets you think, I guess it highlights potential, right? Yeah, there's room to grow. And then my life could be perfect. My life isn't perfect because I'm still thinking like a child, I guess. A series of mechanisms may be used to remove disintegrations. These may include boundary testing, postulate methodology, reflexive loading, exploration of meaning technology, experimental learning technology, i.e. the switch, Boolean logic, and projective methodology. Within the subset of emotions are emotional definitions. Wow, what a sharp turn. Okay, within the subsets of emotions are emotional definitions. Emotions include, for example, fight or flight, joy, satiation, parentheses. All negative emotions trace back to fear. Fear, phobia, is always a lack of data. So this is a very important maneuver. All negative emotions trace back to fear. If you're angry at Nancy or Keith, or if you're confused, if you're doubting, if you're anything that's like not fully on board, it's not because anger is anger. It's because anger is fear. You're not sad because you're just sad. You're sad because of fear. You're ashamed because of fear. All negative emotions trace back to fear. Fear is always a lack of data. So it's the 1-2 punch. And they even have phobias here in parentheses. So phobias are extreme fears, right? And that get in your way. So if you make all fears seem irrational, it's always a lack of data. You're disagreeing with that. Well, if you had the right data, then you wouldn't be acting this way. You wouldn't be feeling this way if you just had all the data. So really, if you're feeling negative emotions, it's kind of because you're dumb and a coward. You're dumb and a coward. That's what this is saying. But one day you'll get it like we get it. When a person fears something, they tend to run away from that thing which they fear. This becomes almost like a self-fulfilling prophecy, which relates to non-integration or disintegration. Again, you are keeping yourself down with these silly doubts you have about what we're saying. Therapy by number leads to primitives and postulates. There are primitives and postulates in both learning and therapy. Learning primitives are the base concepts that a person uses, concepts of something increasing, concepts of something existing, something not existing, two things being added together, etc. Some of them are data concepts, and some of them are process concepts. Atomic units and patterns within learning are defined. For example, atomic units of piano playing would be the different techniques of how to hit the keys and the different drills of practicing with the fingers. Once a person has the atomic units, these patterns generated by them are classical music, jazz music, etc. That allows a person to fill out the whole space of the instrument. So this rational inquiry method, they're kind of saying like with this method, you are breaking down all human behavior to like this formula. So as soon as you understand the formula, then you understand all human behavior. And then nothing will get into your way. And then we can bring out utopia. The reason why there's not utopia is because we are not breaking things down to the scientific method, which is rational inquiry. And then once everyone gets on board with rational inquiry, then we're all set. We got it all figured out. Primitives and postulates with respect to perspective therapy are base emotional primitives that a person can and or needs to have, which form a complete basis, i.e. a methodology used in linear algebra of a complete set of all human behaviors. There it is. So unfortunately, many people either do not have a complete set of primitives or have primitives that are misdirected. You're just doing it wrong. You don't understand human nature. We do. Those primitives can be formed so that each person has the basic elements to have a complete personality and complete range of expression. Having each primitive completely developed gives the individual ultimate flexibility across behavioral and emotional range of being a human. You are not good at being a human. We got it all broken down. We'll help you. Therapy by number or exploration of meaning, or EM technology, includes a whole process of, in a simplistic sense, taking what a person says and presents, communicates both consciously and unconsciously, and the linguistic surface structure of meaning, and finding the deep structure, which represents the internal representation of deep meaning of what they present. This process leads to uncovering the disintegrations the person has. So on the surface, it sounds like really smart. But on deeper structure, maybe not so much. The perspective therapy deals with the person in their present state, with their present resources, and allows them to move forward in a state of being that is called integrated or balanced. What other therapies do is to examine the past or to go into the past. See, they're doing it wrong. If they work in the past and change things in the past, which you can totally do, there is the potential to collapse the present. Oh my God, that sounds terrifying. These processes can cause all sorts of additional problems, like feelings of worthlessness and listlessness. So not only is therapy doing it wrong, they'll make you worse. They won't just make you, they'll damage you. They're going to do things, they're going to collapse your present, and then what? Then you're... So we're going to do things that they don't know. They don't even understand what the fuck they're doing. So don't go to them. Listen to us. What perspective therapy does is to take the person's present resources and take them forward to make them more complete, as opposed to looking at the person's incompleteness now, running to the past and trying to backfill them. What's important is that they're just doing it wrong. Is that it? Okay. So that's it for the first part. The next part will be covering what we can only assume what was in the modules, because we can't know because the government took them away. So we'll see more step by step. We got some basics down as to why this might appeal to people and how slowly their judgment could be chipped away at until they just give up and say whatever you say. I think the modules will be not interesting. Maybe not insightful. But maybe they'll explain something. They'll help us out here, because we'll figure it out. Okay, so that'll be next time. We'll finally get into what was maybe, probably in the modules. All right, thanks.